Welcome to the Autosportradio.com 2021 show. This is Don Kay, your host. We are again from the Grant King Race Shop, 8155 Crawfordsville Road. You got to thank Bill and Stephanie Throckmorton for again and continuously letting us be here. Today's show is presented by Honda and Honda HPD, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the NTT IndyCar Series, SVRA, McGilvery's Pub and Eatery and Speedway, and VP Insurance. Are you a collector? You got a fan in your family or a friend that wants to collects IndyCar related memorabilia? The place to go to find almost anything you want is the 500shop.com. Check it out. They've got about everything. That's the 500shop.com. Check it out. If you need to see a dentist, you haven't seen one in a while, there's only one place to go in the Indianapolis area, and that's the Indy Dental Group. Indy 500 veteran Dr. Jack Miller and his wife, Dr. Liz Lewis, have a phenomenal practice. You'll be glad you went there. Give them a call, make an appointment. Number is 317-846-6125. For those of you like myself that have computer problems, we have the A+ Affordable Computer Doctor. Steve Freeze is a doctor. You give him a call, tell him your problem. If necessary, you can make a house call. His number is 317-328-0766. Paul Page's book will be coming out the 1st of May. It's called Hello, I'm Paul Page. It's Race Day in Indianapolis. You can put your pre-order in now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I highly recommend it. And get the copy as quick as you can, because during the month of May, Paul will be cruising around the Speedway and will be more than happy to autograph it for you. And I also recommend, and I am reading now the book. It's called The Legend of the First Super Speedway, The Battle for the Soul of American Auto Racing by Mark Dill. It is available anywhere, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Target, any place that sells books, you're more likely to not find it there. I recommend it. I'm reading it now. It's really quite good. So do yourself a favor. The Legend of the First Super Speedway by Mark Dill. Check it out. The Trans Am is back alive and well. Tony Perella now has it, and it's running across the country. To get the information, I recommend you go subscribe to their Speed Tour magazines. Go to svra.com and subscribe to Speed Tour. And while you're there, check out their schedule. If there's any event anywhere near you, I highly recommend you go. That's svra.com. Check the schedule of their upcoming events and also subscribe to Speed Tour magazine. And if you've ever wondered why these guys and gals can't wait to get behind the wheel of an Indy car and travel as high as 240 miles an hour. There we go. Okay. It's the place to go is the Indy Racing Experience.com. Look up a date where there are and sign up. And in the promo box, put DK1 and you get a 50% discount. Whenever it's time to get the insurance for your home, renew your insurance for your home, your car, your commercial property, do what most of us have done and check with Mike Pardee at VP Insurance. They're located at 5004 West 16th Street in Speedway. You might be surprised you get better coverage for less money. So give him a call, tell him what you need. He'll help you out. The number is 317-248-0070. Are you interested in a vintage car, or do you have one that you'd like to have rebuilt? Well, the Grant King shops can help you. Give them a call, tell them what you're either looking for or what you would like to have restored, and they can take care of it. The number is 317-820-3595. My guest today is a gentleman that I've been looking forward to talking to. He has just come on board as the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. He's got quite an interesting history, none the least of which is working in nonprofits and then spending 10 years in real estate. I don't know the connection to that, but we're going to find out. He's a native Hoosier, and he's coming here from a place called the Dreamland. It was a nonprofit year-round cultural center and project film located in Nantucket Island, Massachusetts. Please welcome the new president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum, Mr. Joe Hale. And Joe, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure, Don. Glad to be with you.
Now, I got to think coming into something like this, you got to meet the people and get the idea. Are you a race man? I mean, did you follow racing? You couldn't wait to see the cars when you came here?
Well, and you talk about my non-for-profit work, Don. I'm from New Albany, Indiana. Okay, born and raised in Southern Indiana, and we were one of those families that on Memorial Day we used to listen to the race. I mean, I wasn't able to come. My dad was a mailman, and my mom actually had polio, so she was in a wheelchair her whole life. She got polio right right before I was born, when she was about eight months pregnant with me. So one of my earliest memories is pushing her wheelchair down the street in New Albany, Indiana, raising money for the March of Dimes. So I always like to say I'm kind of a charity case myself. And that's why I think I've spent a lot of my time working for not-for-profit organizations, because it is a way to kind of give back. But I started coming to the race when we moved to Indianapolis, I don't know, 40 years ago, started coming to the race. Didn't make it every year. I can't be one of those people that says, you know, I've been here every year for the last 45 years, but I've attended my share of 500s.
As I said, you graduated from Hanover College, and you've spent the majority of your career, all the little break when you did real estate. Is there a course that you took that led you to nonprofit?
I don't think so. I actually started as a teacher in Floyd Central High School outside of New Albany. And I taught English, 7th and 10th grade English, and I was the girls' swim coach. And so we did that for my wife and I. We got married and lived down there. And then we moved to Germany, where I taught at an Air Force base in Germany for a couple of years before moving back to Indiana and moving to Indianapolis at that time. And worked for the Indiana Arts Commission and went down to New Harmony, Indiana, and was vice president of the organization that was restoring that town. And then came back when I was 27. I became the director of the Metropolitan Arts Council, which was the city of Indianapolis's arts council. And then, as you said, I took a break and spent 10 years in commercial real estate, and then actually moved into there's no logical progression here, but I moved into the utility business and with PSI Energy, and then we merged with Cincinnati Gas Electric company to create a company called Cinergy Corp, which some people will remember. I was president of Cincinnati Gas Electric company for a while. I came back, I was president of PSI right after John Mutz left. And then we merged with Duke Energy and created the largest utility in the United States. And I continued to do some work, but then I got back involved in not-for-profit work and was traveling around the world providing solar lights to off-grid families in developing countries.
And that seems to be where we're heading now, is solar energy and solar everything. See how that works. But if I need any help, I'll consult with you.
All right.
I know a number of people that are involved in nonprofit. My question to you would be, obviously you want to grow the museum, you want to expand the museum, you want to do, get new members. How or where do you look when you're looking for companies to get involved to help you raise the funds you need to expand? Who do you call on? Billy's dog leash company, or where do you go? I mean, what are the companies that will benefit from being a part of this museum?
If Billy's dog leash company is interested in the race, I will call on. Believe me, my staff will tell you I'll call on anybody. But no, I mean, I think we've got to make sure that people understand. I think there's been the perception in the past, quite frankly, Don, that, well, the Holman family will take care of it because they own the track. And I think there's that perception now that, well, Roger Penske will take care of it because he owns the track. The reality is the museum is a separate and distinct 501c3 operation. Has nothing to do with Indianapolis Motor Speedway other than the fact that we're very lucky to be right in the middle of the track. But we're a separate organization. Now, the Speedway owns our building, but we own everything in the building, the collection of cars, the collection of artifacts that we have. So part of it is just making sure people understand that we've got to depend upon the public's help in order for us to stay in business. And that's by becoming a member, helping us underwrite an exhibition that we're doing. And we've got some really exciting ideas for upcoming exhibitions, believe me. But we got to make sure that people understand that we are a separate and distinct 501c3 operation. We get no funding at all from IMS. They're good friends. They're a great landlord because they're only charging us $1 a year for this building. But we've got to pay for the operation of it.
Well, listen, I'll give you $5 and let me lease it. I'll lease it from you. You make $4. From what I've read of your bio, you've been quite successful in fundraising and getting backers for the various organizations you've been with, to the tune of some like $100 million you've been able to raise. Is it important that the backers of the museum be from here, or can they be from anywhere? And what's the benefit to being part of it, to have my company say, all right, we'll contribute X amount to be a part? What do they gain?
They can be from anywhere, believe me. And I view it not as a donation, but an investment. And so if I make an investment in anything, I want a return on that investment.
Right.
So is it that, this museum is going to help enhance Indianapolis and Indiana's reputation? I mean, when I was selling solar lights to off-grid families, every month I was in Rwanda or Nepal or Guatemala or Costa Rica. And believe me, if you say Indianapolis, the first thing out of people's mouth is 500.
Right.
So it's got, we're enhancing the reputation, not only of the Speedway, because think about it, our job is really to promote the Indianapolis 500. We're kind of a marketing arm of the Indianapolis 500. We preserve the history of that race and that organization. So that's really our focus. Anybody can support us from anywhere in the world, quite frankly. But again, what are they going to get out of it? They feel passionately about racing. They feel passionately about the 500. They support our mission, which is really to preserve the history and the stories around the 500. So if I ask anybody to support us, and I don't just ask for money, I ask for an investment. If I ask for that investment, I've also got to talk to them about what they're going to get from it too. And maybe it's a corporation who wants to get caught doing good, and they want to associate themselves with an organization like ours. And I can talk about the demographics of the people that come in here, our visitors. I mean, they're literally from all over the world. People are in here every single day. This has been a challenging last 12 months, as it has been for everybody. But we're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, Don, I'm looking out at gate 2 off of 16th Street, and cars are lined up here. They are just streaming in here because it's the first day of a 16-day vaccination clinic at the track here. IMS hopes to vaccinate 100,000 people before May 1st.
And hopefully some of them will say, hey, let's go check the museum out. We're here.
Well, believe me, while they're waiting, make sure that there's no reaction to their vaccination. We've been handing out flyers to encourage them to come to the museum. It's a great marketing opportunity. We had a captive audience over there.
There you go. And then put on the headline, stop by and see Marty. That'll get them in. How different is this from what you've done in the past, or where you're coming from, the Dreamland? Is this a completely different project for you?
Well, first of all, we're not 30 miles out in the ocean. And whenever there's a nor'easter, we're not completely isolated. No boats, no planes, no no way to get off. It's nice to be back in America. I'll be honest with you there. And in some ways it's the same. I mean, again, I'm raising money for it. I want people to support it. I mean, on Nantucket, it was kind of the cultural center. It's where you went to see a movie, went to see a concert, went to hear, Joe Biden or Leslie Stahl or Brett Baer talk about, their professions. Here, we're creating exhibits that we want to draw people. I mean, in a month, at the end of this month, we're going to be opening Rocket Rick Mears. It's going to be a tremendous exhibit about Rick Mears. A lot more interactive than we've been in the past. There'll be QR codes. You click on the QR code, it immediately brings up a video of Rick racing or a great story about him. This place has to become more family friendly, more kid friendly. We got the car guys, the car folks. They've been coming for a long time. But do we have enough for their children, their grandchildren to do and experience here? That's what we're really exploring, and we've got to get better at it. The Children's Museum, people flock there because it's so much fun as well as educational. We've got to look for the fun and the entertainment part to combine with the educational part. That's what we're working on.
You find that once people get into something, for instance, I've been here since 1964, not here. I moved here 30 years ago, but I came to this race and I've been hooked. I've been involved in one way or another in the media, particularly with this program, for over 30 years, 40 years actually. There's something about this sport that once you get into it, you almost can't get out of it. Are you still acquiring vehicles, cars that people have that you find are available? Are you expanding your collection?
Absolutely, all the time. And we've got to be judicious about it, certainly, because we've only got so much space here. And so we're constantly, I guess, upgrading the collection, if you will. I mean, we're looking right now at a new IndyCar winner that we would love to have as part of the collection, but it may mean that we have to deaccession some cars that we have in the collection that are really cool cars. But again, getting back to our mission, it's all things 500 related. So we've got a lot of cool cars, very valuable cars that have no connection at all to the 500. So do we sell a couple of those in order to then have the funding to buy an IndyCar winner? It's probably in our best interest and the best interest of our collection to do that.
I know it's been a spectacular collection. I've had the opportunity over the years to tour the basement, and it was a time when you wanted to see a car that was against the wall, you had to crawl over 3 others to get there. So they do have, and it's too bad you're not here, because they had for lack of a better word, a merry-go-round. It used to be that Ray Skillman bought and refurbished, and it's at his collection down on the south side. Does the museum get calls from people say, I found this car, I have this car, my grandfather's had it, and I don't need it anymore? Are you interested? Do people call?
Well, as long as they know, if it's, again, connected to the mission of the organization, absolutely. But if they also want to donate something that is a car that is valuable, we are very upfront with them and say there may be a time in the future where we would deaccession that car. We would sell that car in order to help the museum build its collection. So I think they've got to know that. Now, we're doing a little, brainstorming and daydreaming and projection for the future, planning for the future for the organization. And in 2026, it'll be the 50th anniversary of this building. I say that's a great time, kind of put a stake in the ground. At that point, could we be opening a completely reimagined museum from top to bottom? Maybe there's a new wing, a new pavilion connected to it. It was interesting, Don, day before yesterday, the whole staff, we all went down to the Kentucky Derby Museum. They have a film there that it inspires you, it motivates you. In fact, one of my colleagues, we were having lunch afterwards, and she said, all that film made me do was want to go out and buy a ticket to the Kentucky Derby. It's on my bucket list now. I've got to go to it. It was that cool. It was 360. It surrounded you. I mean, it was really inspirational. We've got to have those kinds of experiences here at the museum. And maybe as we raise money and we create a new strategic plan and we start looking at how we might be able to expand the organization, I hope it will be much more immersive and interactive and participatory than it has been in the past.
Is there any thought, there was talk, and not much, but talk about moving the museum off the property into some other area where you could expand? Is there any thought about that? Are you looking to enlarge the size of the building?
Well, I mean, if you Google the 10 most iconic sports facilities in the world, we are always on that list, with Wimbledon and what have you. We are always on that list. So part of the draw, and there are other wonderful museums, the Peterson, the Revs Institute, the Duesenberg, but we're right in the middle of the 500. Why in the world would we ever want to move out of this location? So I'm committed to staying right where we are. That's not to say that you couldn't add a wing or two to this and kind of rethink the way we display cars. You're right. I mean, the basement, we have a basement tour now. It's very exclusive. There's a mystique about it. It's very expensive to go on it. You're down there for 30 minutes. No cameras are allowed, 6 people at a time. But there are some of the most valuable cars in the world in our basement right now. And this is a way to get a glimpse of that. And I know it's not for everybody, because I said it's very expensive to go down there. But, I think we need to rethink how we display things. We need a new orientation film, certainly, to give people the same foundation of knowledge when they come in here, learn about the history of this place, certainly. But I guess just stay tuned, because there's going to be some exciting things in the future for this museum.
Well, one thing I can say, and I'm sure you've discovered or knew ahead before you got here, that you've probably got one of the best production companies anywhere in the country in IMS production. So for you to get a video or a thing put together shouldn't be any problem for them. All you got to find is a circle to put it in, a theater that you can make a circle in.
And the money to pay for it.
That's the other problem. We're getting to that.
Yeah.
Is it difficult? Now, let me back up. You were on an island when it was cold and windy and so forth. You were isolated. Were you looking for another place to move, or did somebody contact you and said, hey, we got a job, would you like to think about it?
Oh gosh, about 40 years ago, I met a guy who was also relatively new to Indianapolis, named Mark Miles, and we became very, very good friends. Our families are friends.
I've heard of him.
Have you?
Oh, yeah.
And traveled together a little bit and stayed in touch the whole time. I mean, I never wanted to leave Indiana, to be honest with you, but it was that back when PSI merged with Cincinnati Gas Electric Company, we were the little guys, but we ended up running the combined company. So we all moved to Cincinnati at that time. Reluctantly, I'll be honest with you. But I stayed in touch with, all of my Indianapolis friends, and we raised the kids here, and one son went to DePaul, the other son went to IU. So we maintained those relationships, certainly. And so I'd been at the Dreamland for about 5 years, and I told him when I took the job, I said, this is a 5-year job for me. It was losing $250,000 a year, had no endowment. Staff was a little disorganized. The only thing it did was show movies, not even every day. And it was a $38 million cultural complex that they had built there. Most expensive movie theater built on earth. I mean, Dubai, any place. And yet it wasn't being used. So I said, I'll commit to 5 years to try to turn this around. So, fast forward 5 years, we had an endowment. We've been in the black for 4 years, had a crackerjack staff. We were doing all kinds of programming, movies every day, concerts, speaker series. And it was just, it was time. I mean, I said it was 5 years. And Nantucket is very important to my family. We've been going there for 40 years. We have a home there. My daughter was married there. So it's important. And we'll keep vacationing there, certainly. But I got a call from Mark Miles. He said, hey, anybody might be interested in running the 500 museum, Speedway Museum. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more about it. And he said, well, I think there's an opportunity. We have new ownership of the track. I think there's a real interest on the part of the board to rethink it from top to bottom and really create a world-class museum. And I said, well, let me think if I know anybody. And then at the end of the call, I said, would you ever consider something like this? I said, well, let me think about it. So long story short, I came here as kind of a secret shopper one day because I wanted to see how guests were treated. Didn't tell anybody I was coming. I found it frustrating because I couldn't book anything online. I had to call or else show up in person. I thought, well, that's a little antiquated. But I did. I came in and I saw how cool it was, but I also saw the opportunities it presented. So to make, again, there were a lot of interviews and things like that. And I then accepted the job, I guess, in September, October, with a start date after the first of the year. And so, there's been a little bit of drinking from the fire hose since I've been here, but I'm learning the ropes. And we've got a great staff in place. I got some new folks that have joined us recently too. And so I'm very, very, very optimistic about the future.
Well, you certainly had a good starting point, in my opinion. I mean, I've been over there hundreds of times. But of course, as I mentioned, the first thing you walk in the door and you see that big smile on Marty's face, that starts the whole day off right there.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more.
It's kind of interesting. A friend of mine has a franchise for, it's called the Ford Garage. It's a restaurant, but it's connected. Ford company has to do with it. And one of their things is when you find a plate, when you see it, there's a Model A sitting out in front, and he's got two of them. And I said, Tim, are these cars available? Oh, yeah. You'd be surprised how many they find in barns and so forth. He said, there's quite a few of these cars around because he's going to open another one. So they got card for it? Oh, yeah, they've got them. So, I got to assume the same thing with Indy cars. There are cars around that people have in the collection. At some point in time, they pass on, give it to the son or the daughter, and they say, well, I don't know what to do with it. So hopefully they would call the museum and say, guess what we got? Are you interested?
We welcome those calls.
Um, what is your plan as far as exhibits? Are you planning to keep them 6 months at a time? Will you keep rotating so that there's something new? Somebody comes on a trip and it's gone for 3 months, they come back where there'll be another show they can stop and see?
Well, we're hoping to double the number of exhibits we're doing each year from 2 to 4. I mean, as I said, we've got Rocket Rick Mears opening on April 30th. The opening to the public is May 1st this year. We've now planned out our exhibits for the next 5 years. And some of the ideas that we're looking at are an exhibit called Second, which would be an exhibit focused on all those drivers that worked their whole life to win the Indy 500, and they came in second place. What's the story behind that? What impact did it have? We're talking about one on 500 fashion and how that's changed over the years. You know, guys used to come here in beautiful suits, and women had dresses and gloves and hats. And you know, now we've got, you know, the snake pit. It's changed a little bit. We've talked about doing an exhibit called Sterling. We have some of the most incredible sterling silver trophies, racing trophies. They're pieces of sculpture from around the world. We want to do an exhibit called Race at the Race and talk about and acknowledge that Blacks were not allowed in the 500 early on. And then there was a colored section. And now we've had Black drivers. We've got minority-owned teams. We got female-owned teams. And so how that's changed and what really the hope for the future in terms of equity here at the 500 is going to look like. Next year, we've got a Roadsters to Records about roadsters. So we're coming up with some interesting ideas that will appeal to car people, but hopefully will appeal to a much broader audience as well. That's what we've got to do, Don. We've got to really broaden our base of support and our audience here.
Well, it seems to me from the people that I've associated with, and every May, except for last year, we have a group that comes, I call it my group. There's 18 to 20 of us that come from Texas, Florida, Maryland, Colorado, California. They all come in for the race. And one of the things that one of the first stops they make is they try and come in early enough that the museum isn't packed. They go through the museum to see what's new and exciting. And
for your friends, Don, please know that Indy cars are always going to be the heart and soul of this museum. That's what it's built around. And that's really going to be our focus. Those winners, those Indy cars are always going to hold the most prominent space in this museum.
And I think your idea of second, I mean, I know guys that spent 30 years here and the best they came in was fourth, but they were back every year to compete. When I first came here in 1964, I think the entry number of cars was 103 or something like that. But there was one catch to one of them. Jim Hurtubise entered 2 cars. One of them, the front end didn't have an engine, it was full of beer, but he had 2 entries. And I think, things are getting better, things are improving. And I think, to me, one of the important parts of coming to Indianapolis and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is to go see the museum, because it is spectacular. There is no question about it.
And we also want to look at the future too. I mean, what role are electric cars going to have? Will they ever play a role in racing? What about autonomous vehicles? What's that going to mean? I mean, is that just like watching a video game take place when there's no driver in the car? So, I mean, I think there's so many different ideas that are kind of intriguing, that you could kind of explore as a museum that looks at this race and what the future might look like here.
Well, I've said this a number of times. There is a Formula E electric car race. They look like Indy cars or Formula One, but they're electric powered. Can you imagine coming here? I won't live long enough, I hope. Where they have an electric race.
I know.
People in the grandstand saying, turn the PA down, it's too loud. Now you can't hear it a lot of times because of the cars. Right. But electric cars be like when the turbine ran. It sounded like your mother's vacuum cleaners went by. It didn't make any noise, very little. A lot of interesting things to look at. And I have to say that what I've read about you, what you bring to the table is what this place needs to move forward. I think, it's done well, and I thought Betsy did a nice job, and they've started with the programs and various things going on in the exhibitions, which started a few years back. I look forward to, wandering around there every so often. I try and stay out of the way of the crowds. But I think it's a place that I don't know anybody that doesn't come here at one time or another, either passing through town or coming for the race, that doesn't want to go see the museum.
Well, we sure hope so. We're also starting this summer an advisory council, and people from all walks of life, all over Indiana and the Midwest. We're inviting in just to have lunch. We'll buy them lunch, and then we're just going to ask them to critique us. What could we be doing better? What advice do you have for us? Because sometimes when you're planning for the future, you don't have to be that smart. You just need to be a good listener. Right. And I think by bringing the public in and bringing people that support the museum, as well as people that have nothing to do with the museum, people that represent maybe different communities, the Latinx community that we want to start bringing in more people. We got to hear from them. Tell us what we're doing right, but tell us what we could do better too. So that's what we're going to be focusing on with our advisory group.
Well, I think the step that the board made to bring you on board, as you and I have just bonded because I just met you this morning about 5 minutes before we started. But from what I looked at, it seemed to me that the board made a good choice in who they brought in, somebody that understands what it takes to make this thing tick. It just doesn't work by itself. You got to have help. And obviously, from what I've read, you know how to do that.
Well, thanks, Don. I appreciate your time today. I am really excited about the future of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum.
And one of these days, I'll come knocking on your door if Eric doesn't stop me before I get there.
It's always open, except for right now.
Yes. Well, tell Eric, thank you for helping me make this happen. I've been talking to him about it, and he said he would try and make it happen, and he did, and I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you
for your time.
You bet. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. My guest has been Joe Hale, the new president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. When you come to town for whatever reason, if you have a hot dog or go see a basketball game, you got to stop by the museum, check it out. It's really spectacular. We'll have a few shows upcoming. We got some planned in ahead, so we'll always be here. And hopefully someday we'll get back to live programming. Until that time, this is Don Kay saying thanks to Joe Hale for being our guest. Until next time, see you then.